Hi, welcome. This is our sixth panel series of debates entertaining all declared candidates for the California 2021 recall election. We are in talks with about 20 of the 50 registered candidates, approaching 25 or about half. Yes, California is hosting these series of debates. We started in March before anyone else. No one else is hosting a series of debates like us. No one else has this many candidates, and no one else has done this many in the series. We are doing this not because we back up the recall or because we oppose the recall, but simply because this is going to happen. California voters will be asked to make a judgment concerning the future of California, and we want to make sure that the public has all the correct facts because we have a history of presenting information that's not covered by the mainstream news. Today, you are going to see previous candidates who have appeared in debates that we've had over the last month. All of these candidates have already appeared in debates where they were asked how they would respond to different California crises as chosen by the PPIC and UC Berkeley polls throughout Jan and March. Now we're going to ask a new suite of questions in order to keep it fresh and interesting. Recently, the Times of San Diego is the only mainstream publication to attempt to do what we're doing here: interview the candidates. The Times of San Diego asked about 12 questions. We took those questions and boiled them down, and we're going to present them to the candidates here. So the top four candidates in opposition to Newsom, I believe it was Jenner, Cox, and Ose, and one other person, were asked these questions by the Times of San Diego. We're going to ask new candidates these exact same questions, hoping that it gets into their narrative. So if the Times of San Diego is already getting a certain amount of attention interviewing high-profile candidates, we're providing this debate asking the same questions in the hopes that the media will want to see your answers and include you into a suite of answers across all candidates. We have a history of being able to get our narrative into the mainstream with a great deal of success and promoting everyone who partners with Yes California. So we're going to be asking questions from the Times of San Diego. Quickly, here are the questions. Why would you be a better governor, California governor, than any of your rivals? How would you represent the interest of all Californians and not just recall supporters? Had you been governor in March 2020, what would you have done to protect the public health? California's budget surplus, how would you spend the extra money? Do you support legislation to permanently ban new oil and gas leases off the coast? Do you support the elimination of state income taxes for those up to $50,000 income as individuals and households up to $100,000? Do you support laws that penalize local governments that fail to meet housing supply goals? And should money for law enforcement be steered to social services or other programs? Each candidate will have a minute and a half to respond to each question. We'll be going through them in order. All candidates will be given the same opportunity to answer each question, and all questions come from the Times of San Diego recent recall debate. So we're going to go in order of the random list. Introductory statements. We will start with Tor Leonard. Tor Leonard, in 2 minutes, how would you like to introduce yourself to the people of California as their next potential governor, sir?
Hi, yes, my name is Tor Leonard. I am a husband and father who lives in the city of Los Angeles, send my kid to the local public LAUSD elementary school. And I am the only candidate in the race who is explicitly running on a platform of this recall should not happen. So what I am asking is that you vote no on question 1 of whether or not Newsom should be recalled. And then you vote for myself on question 2, because I'm the only candidate who is vowing on day 1 to resign the office, which will automatically hand the governorship to our current lieutenant governor, Eleni Koulinakis, who will then become governor, which would also make her our first ever female governor of the state of California.
Okay. Wow, that was quick. Next up will be James. James, your introductory statement, sir. Let me make sure you are unmuted. You are unmuted. Professor James Hannon.
Yes, thanks for inviting me again. Hanink is not a household name, but it rhymes with my financial condition, red ink. I'm sorry to say that I'm not a native Californian. Well, maybe not that sorry. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is rightly called the Athens of the Midwest. Some people might think it's Ann Arbor, but I dispute that. I went to school in Grand Rapids, and I went to school in East Lansing, Michigan. And during the time I was there was a fellow named Magic Johnson. Never went to class with him. That's unfortunate. One thing led to another. I graduated as an undergraduate, gosh, way back when, in San Antonio, Texas, where I wanted to learn some Spanish. And I'm pleased to say I gave my first Spanish language interview just yesterday. Christian Huerta, very good, very enjoyable. One thing led to another, and there was a war in Vietnam. I was a conscientious objector. And then after that, I finally wound up at Michigan State, took a doctorate in philosophy, went to the University of Rochester, and blimey, providentially, I got hired at Loyola Marymount University, where I taught for 40 years. And I always thought that philosophy led to politics, and politics certainly leads to philosophy. And that's why I'm here today. For a good 35 years, my wife Elizabeth and I have lived in Inglewood, California. We have 6 children and 5 grandchildren.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is going to be Dan. 2-minute introduction. Dan.
Hello, fellow Californians. I too, like Tor, am opposed to the recall. I have not vowed to resign immediately. If Tor wants to try to take me out the first 24 hours of my administration, he's entitled to. I'll give him that right. But after that, I'll be governor. I am going to forego my entire salary. I think Mr. Wildstar is going to take $60,000. My entire salary is going to go to the state or to worthy charities that help the people of California. My internal polling actually shows that I am in the lead of all the recall candidates. I don't know how accurate it is or how unbiased it is, but it is what it is. And so I wouldn't say that those 4 Republicans that were interviewed by the San Diego paper are the front runners. Maybe for Republicans, I'm not running as a Republican. I'm running as a Green Party candidate. But as far as my internal polling, I actually am in the lead of all the recall candidates. So I know. So I think that's one reason I have the electability factor. That's one reason I think you should vote for me as opposed to some of these other people who are all fine people, I'm sure. And I am a criminal defense attorney, and I'm also fight for animal rights. And so I have firsthand knowledge. I'm on the front lines of the criminal justice system, and I know all the reforms. I know how to prevent crime, not just throw people in prison for decades. So I look forward to debating the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be Nicholas. A 2-minute introductory statement. Nicholas Wildstar.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Nicholas Wildstar. I'm a husband, a father, an entrepreneur, a working class man, a freedom fighter, a free thinker, and an overall lover of humanity. I've failed, I've succeeded, I've done the unthinkable, I've done the impossible. As many things about me as I could tell you that I am, there's nothing that I can say that will convince you more than my actions as to why I'm qualified to serve we the people as governor. Over the past 10 years, I haven't skipped a beat in staying active to improve the living conditions of everyone in California, whether it was the homeless, a police abuse survivor, a neglected child or animal, or the environment. I've been there to help out in every way that I can. Like most humanitarians like myself, I often found myself frustrated when I wanted to do more, but have had my hands tied by the government. I'm running for governor to free myself and others from being held back from providing all of the solutions available to fix our problems of affordable housing, water and food shortages, accountability of public officials, and every other concern of we the people. Please vote yes to recall Gavin Newsom and elect Wildstar for governor so California values can come first in California. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Next up will be Fuji. 2-minute introduction. Sir.
Yes, hello. I first and foremost want to thank all the candidates for being here. I'm so grateful. Number two, I am the most exciting, different, innovative candidate to become California governor for many reasons. One of the first is I am independent, generally independent, self-funded. Also, I'm pro-life. My website is actually www.governor.life. If you are pro-life, I am the governor for you. If you're pro-choice, I'm here to listen to your concerns. I'm also, as an independent, working hard with Republicans and Democrats to make this the greatest state by creating jobs, by working with our immigrant community. For example, I have a nonprofit, and we do work with the immigrant community to help them stay here. I'm the only candidate that has a genuine technology background. For example, I created a website called candidate.contact, so all the candidates could be listed so we have a well-informed electorate. I'm also an elected California official that have seen firsthand very dangerous forms of waste of taxpayers' money that I am addressing now as an official, elected as a California official and as a candidate. But also, more importantly, hablo español, entiendo la comunidad y la raza. Soy el voto para ti. Estoy luchando para cada persona, inglés, español. Sin embargo, estoy aquí. As you can tell, I'm beyond just English. I have multiple language skills that will make it happen. From Industry City to Santa Ana, from San Diego to San Francisco. You know, I created a website called department.technology that will create an independent technology to make our great state the most technological hub forever. Thank you. And don't forget to vote for Fuji, because you got to say yes to Fuji. Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Okay, we're going to go to Frank. Frank, 2-minute introductory statement. You are unmuted, Professor. Frank? Professor Frank Wade.
Yes, I'm Frank Henry Wade. I was born in San Francisco. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please, sir, your 2-minute introductory statement.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. It's time for your 2-minute introductory statement, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yes, I was born in Right. I was born in San Francisco. I'm a native Californian. I have a doctorate in business administration from Golden Gate University. I'm a CPA. Basically, I have a 40-year background of being a executive of 15 different companies' operations. So I know how to operate large organizations. After I spent 40 years running companies, I went back to get my doctorate from Golden Gate University, and I've been teaching 10 years to mostly Muslim nations because I feel America's presence in education will help solve Islamic extremism. I was also very active in the anti-apartheid movement. My wife is South African, Jose South African, and I have a couple of businesses in South Africa. I got a special award from USAID as a foreign service officer to help contribute to the anti-apartheid legislation. I basically am a liberal on all domestic issues, but I'm a conservative nationalist in international politics. I spent 2 years of my life supporting the war in Vietnam, and for the past 10 years, I've devoted what I felt is the way to solve our relationship with Muslim countries by being in education. I was kicked out of Bangladesh about 3 months ago because they wouldn't extend my visa. After I had been at North-South University for 5 years, my work was not finished. I got the CPA exam to be given in India, and I wanted Pakistani Indians and Bangladesh students to pass a CPA exam over there so they could qualify for H-1B visas here.
Thank you,
And
Professor.
the government of
Thank you.
Bangladesh terminated my visa. Yes, thank you.
We have to stop it there. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Okay, just to make sure that
Okay,
each
great.
amount of time,
Thank you.
we're going to go right to the questions. These are questions from the Times of San Diego. Times of San Diego is the #1 mainstream publication so far to ask recall candidate questions. We took those questions and are going to now apply them to the rest of the candidates here. All candidates that you are seeing are declared candidates and have already participated in the more general rounds of questions offered by Yes California in our series of debates. The first question from the Times of San Diego for the recall candidates will be, in 1 minute to no more than 1.5 minutes, and we're going to be a stickler on time, no more than 1.5 minutes. Please try to keep your answer to 1 minute. Why are you the better candidate as California governor versus any of the other rivals? First person we'll be asking will be Tor. Tor, why are you better than any of the other candidates, sir? In 1 minute, no more than 1.5 minutes.
So like I said, I am against this recall, which the latest polls are showing that just over a majority of Californians are as well. And so I am the only candidate that you can vote for in this recall election when you go into that booth or do your vote by mail ballot and mark no on question 1 about whether to recall Newsom. But then you also have to make a choice for number 2 to vote for me, who will then resign on day 1 and give the governorship to our current lieutenant governor, because voting for me means I'm the only one that will ensure a smooth transition to another Democrat as governor who's been vetted, who's experienced, who's competent. Our lieutenant governor, she'll automatically assume the office. Everyone else in this race is either a Democrat who has no experience or no business governing a state the size of California. And you'll also, of course, like I mentioned, be indirectly electing the first ever female governor of the state of California, which would be an awesome thing in my view.
Thank you. Next up will be James. Let me make sure you're unmuted. Professor, how would you handle, why are you the better candidate than any of the other rivals?
Because I support a consistent ethics of life, end capital punishment, direct the University of California to cut its ties with Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. Its mission is advancing nuclear weapons technology and minding nuclear stockpiles. It's in the service of mutual assured destruction. Next comes physician-assisted suicide. It abandons vulnerable people easily pressured into suicide. We need to care for them, not kill them. So let's expand hospice services for the terminally ill. Last is the massacre of the innocents. There is a basic moral compass that tells us that it's wrong to kill an innocent human being. Crisis pregnancy centers help women at risk for abortion. Javier Becerra and Kamala Harris tried to shut them down. I would support them.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, why are you better than any of your rivals? Dan.
Well, I think I too have a consistent vision, and I'm for freedom. So if people want to kill themselves with doctor assistance, they should be free to do it. If women are pregnant and they need to terminate their pregnancies, they should be free to do it. If you want to own a gun, be free to do it. You want to speak freely under the First Amendment, be free to do it. I'm into freedom. And so if you want freedom, you should vote for me. I disagree with Tor. I am highly qualified to run this state. I've done much more difficult jobs in my life, so I'm not worried at all one bit. And just to help out Tor, I will now vow on my last day as governor to resign so we can have a female governor once and for all, even if it's only for 1 day. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes to Nicholas. Why are you the best candidate in the recall election, sir?
Well, I believe heavily in the motto that the government that governs the least governs the best. And right now, I think we need to see that more in government. I'm also the only candidate that will restore your sovereignty by letting you own yourself. There are candidates on this panel and running for governor, as well as elected officials that still feel like the government should be controlling you and your body and your choices. And I, again, as governor, want you to own yourself. I'm also committed to we the people and no one else. Not any Russian government, any Chinese government, not any union or corporation or any type of special interest group. I'm beholden to we the people of California and them only. And that's my pledge to we the people were they to elect me governor of California.
Okay, next up will be Fuji. Why are you the best candidate, sir?
Well, now that you're asking, but yes, I am the best candidate for many reasons. I'm innovative, I'm different, I'm multilingual. I worked in high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. I'm going to get our kids back in school ASAP, in person. Also, what's important is I can think of innovative ideas to improve our election process. I will invite international observers in our election process for up to 4 years out. So we have a fair and accountable election as prescribed and allowed by California state law. There's a lot I know that I see as an elected official, and now it's time to bring it to light and get to really clean the house. You know, what's really important, I have innovative ideas that are different. For example, I'm creating a cryptocurrency called the Panda Bear that's been out there for a while. I'm also proposing internet voting based on blockchain technology. So I encourage you, go to my website, www.governor.life, because every life matters. I am very pro-life, I'm pro-immigrant, but I'm also pro-business. I know how to make sure that businesses stay here and don't flee the state like they've been doing. There's a lot of good talent out in our communities and our state government. But unfortunately, Gavin Newsom did some things right, but he did a lot of things wrong too. Here's the time to vote for an independent, a genuine independent with a proven track record of not taking money from outside sources like lobbyist unions or other political parties, Republican or Democrat. I'm your independent choice, 100%. I never belong to the Republican or Democrat Party. I'm here to work with both Republicans and Democrats to bring them together, get the job done. Thank you. Say yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. We're going to go to Frank. Why are you the best candidate, Frank? Professor Wade?
Yeah, well, I have 40 years of experience in working with, Frank Wade here. I have 40 years of experience working with large organizations where I had many projects to complete. Now, the big point is that as a professional CPA, I had a fiduciary responsibility to members of the company, the shareholders, the managers, as well as the stakeholders, people of the general public. And it is my opinion that you have to have an independence of attitude on every single issue in order to determine what's right and what's wrong. Your current governor is basically fulfilling the wishes of these 7 or 8 or 9 large families that are extremely wealthy. So you know that every decision he makes to benefit the people that put him in office that have supported him all of his life. Then you have people who are representing big business. In every decision they make, they will always support big business's position. I have worked for big business, but I have an independent fiduciary responsibility to the general public. And I will look at all the issues involved and I will decide what is the most fair decision to be made. Now, no other candidate has expressed this. They either come up with they're going to support one side or the other, or I've heard that people espout philosophy, and philosophy is not going to get the problems of this state solved. So that is my
Thank you, Professor. I'm sorry. We have to keep it to 1.5 minutes per candidate. We're looking for minute answers, no more than 1.5 minutes, in order to make sure everyone gets the same time. Thank you, Professor. I appreciate your participation. Okay, that was round 1 of the first question. We're going to go to round 2. Why would you represent the interests? How would you represent the interest of all Californians and not just the recall supporters? Again, this is a question asked from the Times of San Diego. We're going to go in order from the random list generator, which has reordered the candidates in the order they will answer. I have no control over that. It was done by random.org, a random list generator. So the first question is going to go to Tor. Why are you, how would you represent the interests of Californians and not just recall supporters? Tor Leonard.
So like I said, when I resign on day 1 and our current lieutenant governor becomes governor, she's shown, as she's been serving as lieutenant governor, that she operates in the interests of all Californians. But another thing is that the way in which this is set up, this recall election, that I find so disappointing that this is the setup that we have in the state of California, is that we could end up electing in this recall election someone who receives fewer votes than the number of votes that Newsom gets. So I just think that's ridiculous, this entire process. And so you're finding that the candidates who are in the race, who you have some of the Democrats that, like I said, I don't feel are experienced enough. Not that they're not qualified, because of course you're literally qualified if you meet, age requirements and being a California resident. But you've got a lot of people in this race who are not Democrats, and the citizens or the residents of California have shown that people who aren't a Democrat are incapable of winning a statewide race in California in the last 15 years. And there's a reason for that. The residents of California don't want what you're selling. So if you want to win a statewide race in a typical fashion, 2022, next year, just around the corner, if you don't like Newsom, vote him out in 2022 and save the taxpayers of California $250 million, I believe is the latest estimate of how much this recall election will cost us.
Okay, thank you very much. The next person up is going to be James. James, how would you represent the interests of all Californians and not just those enthusiastic about the recall?
Well, I sure enough won't spout philosophy, but I surely will do philosophy. What we need to do is coordinate our personal and public interests. Without this coordination, California is just another venue for political power struggles. But we can only achieve this harmony if we work for the common good. No one is excluded from the common good. It includes the whole range of material and cultural conditions that enable us not just to survive, but to flourish. The common good does not demand mathematical equality, but it does demand that we all have access to the core goods of life, family, knowledge, the natural world, and harmony with the sacred. If I'm seeking the common good, I am representing all Californians. My party, the American Solidarity Party, proposes that we move from our common ground to the true common good of all Californians.
Thank you. Next up will be Dan. Dan, how will you represent the interests of all Californians and not just recall supporters?
Well, first of all, I don't think the recall supporters can be a diverse group. I too am against the recall, but I think I will easily be able to represent all Californians. I'm not a knee-jerk conservative or knee-jerk liberal. I am running as a Green Party, and I think one thing that's good about the recall election, it does allow like third-party candidates to possibly win because the stranglehold that the two-party system has all throughout America. And, you know, I deal with all walks of life as a criminal defense attorney. I deal with homeless people to millionaires. I deal with dime store hoods to Hollywood elitists. And in my life, I deal with all kinds of people, all kinds of beliefs. On my team, even one of my chief strategists, Damon Packard, he is a hardcore. He doesn't even believe COVID exists. He's a hardcore anti-vaccination person. But then I have the medical team. I have Dr. Abgaris of the Radical Medical Center, who of course is pro vaccine, masks, social distancing. And so I surround myself. I don't just have yes men or yes people around me. I want all views, and then we want to get at the truth and apply the truth and science to the reality so that we can make the best decisions for this country. And I welcome all people, all walks of life to join my campaign, and I think we can do it together. Thank you.
Awesome. Next up will be Nicholas. Nicholas Wildstar. How would you represent the interests of all Californians and not just recall supporters? Nicholas Wildstar.
Well, the people of California are the ones who made this recall election happen, despite the identity of the recall supporters that the mainstream media and Gavin Newsom wants to present. I myself, unlike any of these candidates running or any other, was actually out there as a volunteer collecting signatures for the recall effort in a predominantly Democratic area. So I got to speak with hundreds of Democrats and have them support the recall, as well as sign the petition for California secession for CalExit. So I've spoken with Californians face to face, and basically they just want less taxes and more accountability, period. So that's exactly what they're going to get from Wildstar as governor.
Nice, succinct. Fuji. How would you, as governor of 40 million people, the world's fifth largest economy, sometimes referred to as a nation state by Governor Newsom, how would you make sure that you represented the will of all Californians and not just a fraction that supports the recall election? Fuji Shira.
Great question. What's really important is I'm one of the few candidates that's a genuine independent. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat. I never belonged to either party. I never accepted money from any super PAC, lobbyists, or unions or political party. So I'm not beholden to special interests. I am beholden to the California people, the voters. And just as importantly, I did the impossible. I'm one of the few candidates that got elected that was truly independent. And yet I served my constituents, Republican, Democrats, flawlessly, because I'm committed to moving California forward. As an independent, I have the motivation to really work with all sides of the aisle, but also within our communities. I think California, we got to be multilingual. We have 40 million people, 15 million of them are Latino. I'm here to really work with them. And having a fluency in various languages is key to understanding the needs and requirements to best serve them. Good intentions are good, but skill sets are just as important, if not more. So vote Fuji, F-U-J-I. Find my website, www.governor.life. Say yes. Thank you.
Succinct. Next up will be Frank. Frank,
yes.
Well,
thank
how
you.
would you represent the interests of Californians, all Californians, and not just those that like the recall, even including those who didn't like the recall? If you were governor, how would you represent them, sir?
Well, I can represent everyone because of my background. I was born in Ingleside in San Francisco, which is basically a working class, middle class neighborhood. My mother was a school teacher, San Francisco Unified kindergarten teacher for 40 years. My dad was a mortician, manager of a mortuary. I basically had to work every day of my life. I feel I'm a member of the working class and the middle class, and I've also worked for a company, so I know who the interests of the rich people are. I can put myself in the shoes of all the people of California and weigh in on these issues and determine what's best for them and how they would decide. I believe that the current governor is totally out of touch with the common Californian. He's an extremely rich person, has a lot of influence. He's never had to work every day of his life and worry about getting food on the table and what's going to happen to his family. And in addition to this, I've dedicated my life to helping others in South Africa and in the Middle East in the struggle that we have against Islamic extremism. I am committed to helping the common person, the majority of the person, the stakeholder of the state. And I know exactly what they want. And on every issue, I will decide in a fiduciary capacity what my decision would be to help the majority of those people, regardless of who contributed and who helped me and who mentored me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to the next question from the Times of San Diego. The Times of San Diego is the first mainstream news source to attempt to do a recall panel debate like we're doing here. They asked a variety of questions of the top contenders against Newsom. We have boiled down those questions and asking them to recall candidates who have already participated in earlier parts of our debate series. So the first question is had you been governor in 2020, March, what would you have done to protect public health? The first question is for Tor.
Yeah, so do I feel that Newsom did a perfect job? No. But then again, I don't think there's a governor anywhere in the country that you could say, yeah, they had a perfect response to this pandemic. So for me, I mean, there's a lot of small things that I disagreed with him on. I mean, I feel like the state was far too slow to recognize that the vast majority of transmission of COVID-19 was through airborne while indoors. So I think it was ridiculous last summer how we had beaches, parks, and other outdoor places closed, where that was exactly where we wanted people to be. Because if we closed the beaches and parks, then it just drove people into unregulated environments like inside people's homes. So, and also the focus on surface transmission, which we've known for quite a long time is pretty much non-existent, surface transmission of COVID-19. So yeah, there's things like that I would have done differently. Like I said, I feel like they and the CDC at some points too is just far too slow to recognize the science that was coming in about COVID-19. But again, if you don't like the job he did, vote him out next year when he's up for re-election anyway. And again, if we weren't having this recall election, we could be saving the taxpayers of California $250 million, I believe is the latest estimate.
Okay. Next up is James. James, had you been governor in March of 2020, what would you have done?
For a start, I would lead by personal example. No special privileges. On Newsom's watch, we neglected our elderly in nursing homes. COVID took a terrible toll where so many of the most vulnerable lived. I would have acted to protect them. On Newsom's watch, the state was dismissive towards places of worship. There was a secular muscle flexing. The Supreme Court vetoed his overreach. I would have treated places of worship fairly. Newsom was muddled about science. Real science is a great achievement, but the slogan, trust the science, is dangerous and superficial. In practice, it means trusting the scientists. We might as well say, trust the generals or trust the politicians. Newsom should have set up town hall meetings to let us question public health officials. I'd ask Dr. Fauci about the use of tissue from aborted babies in vaccine production and development.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up will be Dan. Dan, if you were governor, March 2020, how would you have done things differently, if at all?
Well, first, I got to ask James. This is my third debate with James. What is that noise in the background going on? What is going on there, man? I can't. Well, you can tell. Respond next time. But anyway, getting to Tor's point, he's saying why. You know, we're already having the recall, so it doesn't matter how much it's going to cost. It's going to cost what it's going to cost. And I could say the same thing. He says, why don't we just run in 2022? Well, why don't you just change the law about recall elections and somehow get them off the books? I mean, you could say that, but it's happening. It's reality. And actually, I'm not against recalls in theory. I just think this one's a little wacky. there's only a year left, and you just have these Republicans who know they can't get in, funding this, trying to sneak in. Okay, as how I'd handle the pandemic. First of all, I wouldn't lie to the people. Dr. Fauci at the beginning was saying that you didn't need masks just because he thought we wouldn't have enough masks. Tell people the truth and let them decide the best course of action. Once you lie to people, they'll never trust you again. Also, they should have had, instead of closing things like businesses, they should have been open 24 hours a day so that the people would be more spread out, create more jobs, and that would be much safer than cramming everyone into grocery stores were only open for a few hours a day. People were getting in lines, hoarding stuff. They should have had the grocery stores open 24 hours a day. And yes, they should have had testing immediately. They should have really got on that. They should have treated it much more seriously. I mean, everyone's blaming Newsom. It's easy in 2020 to say that, but that's what I would have done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be Nicholas. Had you been governor in March, what would you have done differently, if anything at all?
Well, express some common sense. I mean, I'll be known as the common sense solutions governor. If I were to have taken any actions at all, I would have based it on the mortality rate, which we find out now is about 98, 99% survival rate, or even the severity of the symptom conditions. I mean, I can understand us taking some precautions if people got blood, coming from their eyes or something like that. But the symptoms were similar to that of the flu. So with that being said, let people protect themselves as they would normally during flu season, or better yet, as they did during the past when there had been other outbreaks like with SARS and H1N1 and AIDS, or the Ebola virus even. We've had all those type of contagions in our country, and there hasn't been so much hysteria, nor has there been so much of a grab for power and control by elected officials. And government does not have the authority to tell people what they can and cannot do with their own bodies. I cannot stress that enough. You have individual sovereignty as a human being that shall never be infringed. So we need to stop with all the authoritarianism by electing Wildstar for governor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fuji, same question. It's March 2020. Pandemic's hitting. Nobody's seen anything like this before. Would you have done things differently? Would you have created the same paths? Looking back, how would you have done things differently at all?
Yes, I would have did it much, much differently. First of all, I'm pro-business. I would create guidelines, not mandates, for businesses to really make social distancing an option. I really believe that masks do help, but once again, options. I think Californians are good people. They will do what's best for the community. And forcing them and vaccine passports is not the solution. Also, I would make the vaccines open source, so there is no doubt, no suspicion. What's the secrecy? Why can't it be in public knowledge like the polio vaccine? Keep it open source. Encourage as many possible, fine, to get vaccinated. But why the secrecy? We got to let it more accessible to keep it open source. And that's one way to do it. That's what I would have done. And also that, yes, some of these candidates that share some valid concerns. We got to keep it accessible 24 hours. So I would have did it much differently. I would have created hospitals accessible 24 hours for vaccinations if they so wanted, and also those that didn't. Want to make it mandatory, make it an option. I think we as a community in California would do what's right for each other. So individual rights in this aspect is essential.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Frank Henry Wade, what would you have done as leader of the world's fifth largest economy, faced with an unprecedented emergency and no seemingly clear guidance? Frank?
Yeah, well, the first thing I have to tell you, I was in Bangladesh during this period. Yes, I was in Bangladesh during this period when it first hit, and I got the information about what happened here secondhand. The point is that most of the rules to protect the health, I believe, were pretty good on from the governor's point of view and the city managers. But one thing that should have been done was TARP money to be put out for businesses that lost business to hold them over. Many businesses have gone bankrupt because they couldn't survive because of the shutdown. Now, in 2008, with George W. Bush, he had a huge TARP money, which is given to the financial institutions and the automobiles and the airlines, I believe. I've done studies of this. He was very good in keeping these businesses alive. They had no such TARP money available for businesses that were hit by this epidemic. This is a gross oversight on behalf of the governor that is basically criminal. And that those businesses should not have gone bankrupt. In addition to that, the gig EDD money has never come now. It's been almost 2 years, and anyone who is gig unemployed hasn't gotten a penny. And this is also a criminal situation. They say, well, the money was stolen. Okay, get a loan from the federal government. The people who are gig unemployed needed this money.
Thank you, Professor.
So, from the health point of view, he seemed to be right, but from these other points, he wasn't.
Okay, thank you. All right. That completes our third question. We're now going to go to the fourth question, taken from the Times of San Diego. This deals with the budget surplus. Governor Gavin Newsom has recently announced over the last few months that California has experienced a budget surplus of unprecedented levels. Now, the Legislative Analyst's Office, the official audit arm of the California government out of Sacramento, has said that the governor lied about the size of the surplus and is actually taking out a loan. So we don't have a clear indication of how big the surplus is. It's somewhere between $35 billion according to the LAO office and $75 billion according to sitting Governor Newsom. If you were governor, how would you spend a budget surplus estimated between $35 to $75 billion in between the estimates of the governor and the LAO office? The first person we will ask is Mr. Leonard.
Yeah, so we need to be spending that budget surplus on a bunch of different things. We need to be helping small businesses who weren't able to be open or not open at full capacity during the pandemic. And also we need to be helping the people who either were not only unemployed, but also those that just had their hours cut back due to the pandemic. We need massive amounts of retraining for anyone with just a high school diploma or no college or vocational diploma of any kind. They need to be offered retraining or community college at little to no cost. We should be using it on climate resiliency things like more renewable energy, more mass transit, more walkable neighborhoods, more protected bike lane networks. We need to support.
Let me handle that. Sorry.
Somebody's phone ring.
Yeah, somebody's phone. I'm muting everything. Sorry. It should be clear now. Please continue, Mr. Leonard.
Can you hear me? Okay. We need to support our public schools. We need to stop the push towards charter schools and magnet schools. Every child deserves a great education. It should not be left up to this lottery to decide if your child's going to succeed. We need to improve services like the DMV, because these are the kinds of things where when people deal with the government in that form and they go, oh my God, the DMV is awful, they have this attitude of the government's bad at doing everything. No, I don't trust them. I don't ever want to pay more in taxes because I don't trust how they're going to spend the money. And also, lastly, let's spend the money on, we need to be doing more preventative burns to cut down on the number of forest fires. That's something that occurred for thousands of years for Native Americans doing that sort of thing. And that's something that we don't do enough of now that we need to be doing more of.
Well done. Well done. Next up is James. James, let me unmute you. James, how would you spend the California budget surplus, sir?
Let me first assure my green friend Dan that those sounds you're hearing are ripples of murmuring assent welling up from all around Inglewood. Now, that said, first of all, we shouldn't spend all that surplus. We need a much bigger reserve, especially to respond to worsening drought and catastrophic wildfires. We're all on edge, and our California ecosystem is at risk. But there are three, I don't want to give you a laundry list. There are three promising and practical ways to use what we don't save. Let's help families to care for elderly and disabled family members at home and reduce their medical costs. Let's fund the biggest gun buyback ever and start with AK-47s. And let's support crisis pregnancy centers. Every life is precious.
Okay, thank you very much. The question goes to Dan. Dan, how would you spend California's budget surplus?
Well, I would spend it on things like renewable energy that would create more jobs, infrastructure that would create more jobs, which would in turn create more income for people, which would in turn create taxes that goes back to the government, and create other things that actually create more money for the government to help other projects. I'd give it to the most needy. These Republican candidates that were interviewed by the San Diego paper, they seem to just want the money to go back to them in forms of tax cuts for the wealthy. That's not the way to do it. We need to give money to the people that need it the most, because then they'll actually spend it. You give tax cuts to the wealthy, they'll just keep it in their bank or whatever. They don't really help the economy. And you've got to help. Yeah, education's a great thing. I mean, there's so much. I mean, it's almost endless what you could spend it on. But I think it should spend on things that sort of fund itself and create more things, and just builds and builds.
Okay. Next up, Nicholas Wildstar. How would you spend the budget surplus estimated between 35 to 75 billion?
Well, I'm a Republican, and as a conservative, I find it very ironic that you have candidates here that are claiming to be Democrats, and they have a laundry list of things they would spend borrowed money on versus giving it back, but will complain over a small fraction of that being spent on we, the people, holding our elected officials accountable, which you think would be integral to the very foundation of what our electoral process is all about, accountability. So I would have returned that money, since it is borrowed. This surplus money is borrowed money from the federal government that was extra from emergency aid funding, which was unnecessary. And my goal as a candidate is to stop government overspending and overspending on government. So I'll be limiting the salary of all state employees to $60,000, which is about the median income in California, starting with my own. I also will be not accepting a pension, and will be liquidating the pension program. I believe that our pension recipients deserve to have a settlement offer and a definite amount of money versus facing the possibility of the state of California going bankrupt and not being able to pay them at all. So if anything, I'm the only candidate that wants to liquidate our deficit and get us out of debt.
Thank you. Next up, Fuji. How would you spend the budget surplus? I mean, unmute your mic.
Thank you. As you can see, I'm the top candidate. I'm also in the middle. I'm here to work with all sides. I would definitely use the money as a significant resource to open up, expedite charter schools, to give schools an opportunity to make smaller class size. The best way to improve education is smaller class size. And charter schools is one way to do that. And also, what's really important, I would use some of that surplus money to hire additional police officers. My mandate would be any California city with more than 1 million people, we would refund our heroes, the police, to make sure they have 2-person teams as much as possible. Our police officers are some of the bravest and hardworking, and I'm proud of our California law enforcement. but they need the right funding. And I will refund our police department. Going back to other sources, what we also need it for is also research and development. I really believe that now is the time to move California forward. Also create a whole new election system to give an opportunity to let voters participate with blockchain technology so they could vote by the internet. Important questions that need to be answered by the voters. I met a lot of voters with a lot of questions. It's time to vote on it. So yes, that's one way to do it. So for example, I met a lot of voters that discussed with me. They want to make California a country. Let the people have a choice and let them decide if they want to or not. Qualified votes by qualified voters. We could use blockchain to do it in an economical fashion. And so that's one way I would use the surplus money. Additional, I would also put some of it in reserve to make sure that we don't spend it all, because we do need it for other resources, such as infrastructure and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank, let me unmute you. Frank, how would you have spent California's budget surplus?
Well, as you know, I'm a CPA for 40 years. And if you want a surplus, I can make one for you. If you want a deficit, I can make one for you. I have to kind of look at the documentation before I'm even convinced that there was a surplus. But I must tell you this, that I wrote a book about the U.S. dollar and gold. Hamilton was correct. The U.S. dollar shall remain supreme, and warning, there's a coming crash of gold. I've been selling this book, and I'll give it to my supporters who contribute to my campaign. But basically, I want California to have as much money as they need. And one of my proposals in the book is that the deficit become part of our national debt. In the Constitutional Convention of 1787, the states gave up the right to print money to the federal government. And according to people like Mark Levine, who I don't always agree with him, one thing he's right on is the fact that the states can come back and reinstitute the power relationship between the state and the federal government. And I believe these super states, like California is the greatest state, we should have a greater influence on the federal government. So one thing that I would propose, and I think it can be worked out, is that the deficit, any deficit in California budget, should be borne by the federal government as part of the national debt. So therefore, we have unlimited amount of money, as the federal government has an unlimited amount of money. So we can do what we have to do to make every citizen happy. But going back to the deficit, I will.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. I apologize. I have to ensure equal time for all candidates in order to be equal to all candidates. I appreciate it, and thank you for your flexibility, sir. We're going to go now to the next question in the same order from the Times of San Diego article. And we're going to go in the order from the random list generator, asking our candidates. Tor, do you support legislation to permanently ban new oil and gas drilling off of the coast of California?
I support the ban because there's no reason why we should be allowing new oil and gas leases off the coast, when instead we need to be doing the opposite. We need to be transitioning to renewable energy sources, not digging in literally or metaphorically with even more oil and gas leases. Instead, we need to be doing the opposite. We need to be phasing out carbon-intensive energy sources.
Okay. Same question to James. Let me unmute you. Professor, how would you deal with the issue of new oil and gas leasing off of the California shore, specifically the Los Angeles, Long Beach region? Would you be supportive or prohibitive, sir?
Let me first apologize. If there's any background noise, it's just a groundswell of approbation. That's what it is. With regard to Representative Mike Levin's bill, I support it. It recognizes past mistakes and it ensures environmentally sound policies. I especially welcome the fact that it will help restore wide public participation in oil and gas leasing decisions. Without public participation, we're left with battling lobbyists and experts for hire. There's far too much at stake to let that happen. At the same time, public stewardship calls for personal responsibility. Part of the work-life balance is our own personal service to the public good. Stewardship calls for action. We have to show up to make our voices heard. No more cocooning at home.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next up will be Dan.
Yes, I too support a permanent ban on the oil and gas leases off the coast of California. I mean, it's just a disaster waiting to happen. Oil leaks, oil spills, ruin our coast, which is one of our greatest resources. So I think that's basically a no-brainer.
Thank you. Nicholas, unmute you. Do you support proposed legislation to ban the extraction of resources off the California coast underwater?
Well, I do support responsible legislation for environmental conservation. I think we do have a responsibility as inhabitants of this planet to, of course, make sure that it's here for us as well as future generations. I do not support the transfer of wealth and resources to corporations, whether it's big oil or big tech. I don't think that they should have the conglomerate over our resources. And with big tech, it's, the internet. So with my Go New Deal on my website, wildstar2022.com, you can find out more about how I plan on returning the ownership of states' commodities to we the people. That way we can be the ones that develop clean energy projects like a state-owned utility like what I want to do on public land, and be the profiteers from that instead of these monopolies. So if you want to end crony capitalism and bring some generational wealth to the people of California, then you want to elect Wildstar for governor.
Next up, Fuji. Fuji, how do you feel about this issue, sir?
The environment is very important for me personally as a native Californian. I cherish our seas and lakes, our forests, our ocean coastline. I do. We're neighbors with Mexico, Baja California. So we have to be mindful too that we're custodians of our environment. But also what's really important is we just can't permanently ban and have those good paying jobs. And a lot of these people that work on them, they have families. This could raise gas prices, in turn raise taxes on everyday working Californians. Without a plan to make sure these hardworking Americans on the platforms have other jobs to go to, I wouldn't ban it yet until they have other jobs. That would be irresponsible for me. I would have them eventually move over to renewable energy work-related services, yes, but ban it outright without a future concept of finding them work is irresponsible, and I wouldn't do that. I will eventually ban it, of course, because it is a disaster waiting to happen. It is something we have to be very careful. But as you can see, I'm in the middle. I'm a centrist. I'm trying to get things done for the people that work on the oil rigs and for our California taxpayers. So we have to be very careful when we say permanently ban. Believe that is not the right way to go. We should eventually get away from such fossil fuels gradually by creating other jobs to replace the jobs that will replace them. Thank you.
Nice. The last up will be Frank. Professor, do you support banning oil drilling off of the coast?
Yes. Well, I currently support banning it now, but I don't want to permanently ban it. I think we should keep all of our options open. The big thing about exploration of oil and gas off the coast is the possibility of an environmental disaster, which would destroy our recreational industries and our beaches could be polluted. So currently we should ban it, but I should keep all options open. I support the idea of alternative energy that would be non-polluting energy, basically what President Biden has been talking about. But as I say, nothing is certain. We might need some more oil off the coast in the future. Who knows? There could be a war. We could have another war like World War II, and we need that. We'll desperately need that oil. So I don't support a permanent ban, but I support the idea of going to alternative energy sources to reduce the climate problems that we have.
Thank you. Thank you. We've completed that question. We're going to go to the next question. From the Times of San Diego, there's only 2 more after this to complete the series. Do you support the elimination of state income taxes as proposed by candidate Faulkner for those individuals earning up to $50,000 and households earning up to $1,000? There is a plan by Kevin Faulkner to eliminate state income taxes for every person who makes up to $50,000 and every combined family who makes up to $100,000. Are you supportive? How do you feel? First up is Tor.
Yeah, I oppose eliminating state income taxes for those individuals and households because no one is going broke due to having to pay some state income taxes. In fact, most of the folks in those particular income ranges don't even actually end up paying that much in state income taxes when they end up filing their taxes. And if you eliminate those taxes, you're going to have to cut services, which is then just going to hurt lower income people. But if Kevin Faulkner would like to make up the gap in lost revenue by raising state income taxes on those who make large sums of money, that would be totally fine by me. We have a whole lot of wealthy Californians who are constantly complaining about high tax rates while simultaneously owning multiple homes or sending their kids to private school or making all sorts of inessential luxury spending. So I don't believe that we should be cutting state income taxes for the individuals in the brackets that Faulkner mentioned.
James, how do you feel about cutting state income taxes?
In principle, I'm sympathetic to the plan. We certainly need to make California more livable for people with modest incomes. Still, I'm not convinced that completely eliminating state taxes for this demographic is the right way to go. In fact, I'm sniffing a campaign giveaway. In any case, it's the legislature that has the final say on taxes. The Democrats' legislative supermajority is a dangerous thing. It threatens to turn the duopoly into a monopoly. Serious third parties deserve proportional legislative representation. Our current winner-take-all system shortchanges real democracy. My party, the American Solidarity Party, vigorously supports proportional representation.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Dan. Dan, how do you feel about the elimination of state income tax for individuals under 50,000 and households under 100,000?
It's fine, but like Thor was saying, I don't know what that noise is, but anyway, he was, the state, when people are complaining about taxes, income tax, they really complain about federal income tax. State income tax, I just looked it up. It's only 6%, and that's only for the money. If you made 50,000, that'd only be for the money above 33,000. So altogether, it'd probably about an average about 3% less than sales tax. So, but I agree. I mean, fine, give them a tax cut. The the people make the least amount of money, and the people make the most should be paying more. We just saw this big leak from the IRS, and it turns out most billionaires don't pay any income tax. So we need to close these loopholes for these billionaires. And if they're going to move out of California, whoa. If they do, good riddance. That's what I say. Thanks.
Next up is Nicholas. Mr. Wildstar, how do you feel about the concept of eliminating state income tax with the revenue brackets described?
Well, I oppose it because every income earner deserves all of their money, not government. Government didn't do anything to earn that money. Therefore, they shouldn't be dictating how much of that person's money should be taken away from them and then redistributed, like in maybe this vaccine lottery that Gavin Newsom is doing, that these Democrats also are in support of, but complain about us again spending a certain amount of money on holding our elected officials accountable. So there's some hypocrisy there. But as governor, I plan on suspending collection of all taxes for all of the people and businesses in the state of California. I think this pandemic, everybody could appreciate an economic reprieve, and that's exactly what they'll be getting with me as governor. I'll also be transitioning the state government to operate from non-taxpayer revenue and a voluntary taxation system. That way, if you want to pay taxes, you're welcome to pay however much you want. You can choose where it's going to go, and you're going to do so locally. The state won't be involved in dictating where that money goes.
Okay. Next up, Fuji. Eliminate state income tax? Don't? Keep it the same? What's the right answer, sir?
At the moment, I will keep it the same because, unfortunately, what keeps me up at night is hyperinflation. It's a real possibility with what's going on that deserves and merits another discussion, another debate. But we have a lot of good people working for the state of California, and I want to make this very clear to all the voters out there. A promise made is a promise kept. Your pension is safe with me, and I will honor that promise. Either you vote or you didn't vote for me. The nurses, the police officers, the firefighters, the teachers, you live on your pensions. I know that. Your pension is safe with me. A promise was made, and I will make sure and fight hard that promise is kept. So no, I would not eliminate state income tax. I will make sure it stays at the current level and not raise it. And I will also find other ways to generate revenue so we don't have to overtax our hardworking Californians. Now is the time to really think outside of the box because Californians are hurting. I understand that some people are getting overpaid in certain government positions, but that's not all. That's a minority, I feel. And I'm proud of our state workers and municipal workers and county workers. And I will keep your pension safe. So I will keep our state income tax as is. Because now is the time to be very careful with our economy and our budget and take it from there. And that's where I stand. I'm in the middle, and you can vote Fuji. That's where I stand. Thank you.
Frank, should we eliminate state income tax, or is it just an overblown idea? Professor Frank Henry Wade.
Well, listen, I'll say it's a stupid idea. Whoever proposed it is a very bad politician. Now, I'm a CPA tax practitioner. I've had my own tax practice for 40 years. Everyone should pay their income tax. I worked for the franchise tax for a couple of years, and the California taxing system relates to the IRS. My big, such a proposal is so ridiculous. I really don't have any more comment to make on that proposal, but I must tell you what I want to change in taxes. I want them to be more tax credits for children. This is a way to stop abortions, basically, because most people have abortions because they can't afford children. You should have the below the line deduction for children as opposed to above the line deduction, which is the case now. So more deductions should be given for children, which amount to a refund if you don't make enough money. And also casualty and theft losses. When we have these earthquakes, when we have these floods, the government should make us whole through taxes. Currently, right now, you get a tax relief if you get the money to rebuild. In other words, if your house burns down and you don't have the money to rebuild, you just walk away and live in a tent. But basically, the government should be giving you that money, casualty and theft losses, and a below-the-line deduction. That's where our tax system must be revised.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That completes that question. We're down to the last two questions, and then we'll be going to closing statements. We're winding down. We have two more questions and then closing statements. Here's the second to last question. Do you support laws that penalize local governments for failing to meet housing supply goals? Governor Newsom famously attempted to penalize local districts in order to encourage them to increase their housing stock. Scott Weiner and many other people who were elected officials supported what's known as infill development, or homes in the city core. But local residences balked at the idea and pushed back. Who's right? How do we solve homelessness? Is it okay to penalize local governments for eliminating the proper requisite stock of multifamily housing? We'll hear from the people who may be running your life. Let's go first in order. Tor Leonard.
Yes, so I completely am in support of penalizing local governments that fail to meet their obligations to increase statewide housing supply, because we are in a housing crisis. On our current trajectory, we're going to be short millions of homes in the state of California within just a few years. We need more housing. We have far too many NIMBY homeowners who oppose any new housing being built in their neighborhood of any kind. I deal with this every year, calling into the neighborhood council meetings about every time there's proposed new apartments being built. And wouldn't you know it, it's always the people who already have a mortgage and already own a home here that are in opposition to new housing being built. And the reason that is because it increases the value of their homes, the fewer homes we build. So it just makes me crazy because the only way to truly ease the rate of rent increase that everyone who doesn't have the luxury of having a mortgage is suffering from is by meeting that demand with additional supply. And so we can also lower the cost of housing being built by getting rid of things like parking minimums. Parking minimums add hundreds of thousands of dollars to the cost of every single apartment complex that's being built. We also need to incentivize builders to start building starter homes again. All these new homes being built have far higher square footage than ever before, even though we actually have fewer people living in them than ever before.
Wow, that was thorough. Okay, next up will be James. James, do we penalize local communities who don't meet local housing goals? Is that an okay thing to do?
In principle, I support laws like SB 35. I'm associated with a group called YIMBY, and naturally we're not too keen on NIMBY. But what's critical is that we examine the process that determines just what those local government obligations really are. What's pivotal is the principle of subsidiarity. Translation, begin at the beginning. Yes, the statewide housing shortage has become a chronic emergency. And of course, the state has a major role in addressing it. But what the state has to do is to reflect the needs and experiences of local communities. The state is for the communities and not the reverse. At the same time, local governments have real obligations to meet. There should be a public commitment to do so, and there is a price to pay for not doing so.
Thank you. Next up will be Dan.
Yeah, I'm all for that law. We need to end homelessness. I think that anyone who makes over $100,000 a year should have to have a homeless person take them into their home. Now, when I'm elected governor, I won't be making that because I'm foregoing my salary, but I am still going to let homeless people live in the governor's mansion in Sacramento. All we have to do is love our neighbor. You know, we don't even talk to people anymore. Just have them come in, let them live in your house. It'll be a great experience for everybody, and it'd probably end homelessness almost instantly. And if people who don't make that much money want to do it, then maybe subsidize, give them some money so they can, you know, pay for this. And we got to, you know, and then, yeah, it's fine. We got to build more homes, but we got to do something about the hideousness of these new buildings. I'm in Los Angeles. They're building all these apartment buildings. They are so ugly and hideous. It's like they forgot how to make beautiful buildings. They tear down these beautiful buildings and build these disgusting, and the McMansions too. They're just hideous. And so I think there should be some kind of something to help people like actually have some taste in this world. And the McMansions, you definitely have to let a family of homeless people live somewhere in your McMansion.
Okay, next up is Nicholas. How do you feel about penalizing local governments for not providing goals to meet housing needs?
I oppose it because it's going to penalize innocent people, the residents of those cities, and not the power players, the ones calling the shots that are actually preventing that growth. Which I also find, again, ironic that these Democrats here on this panel think it's okay that our elected officials got to continue to collect their taxpayer-backed salary while people lost their jobs, like Gavin Newsom, who only applied that 10% pay cut once he got exposed by the media. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll be calling out these city officials myself that interfere with local housing development demands. If the people of those cities want more housing built and you have city officials preventing that, then I will again be letting that be known on the state level. I'll also be reducing the cost for home builders by suspending licensing and zoning fees. I think that's the best way to address affordable housing that's needed here in our state. And of course, by doing so, we'd be able to address homelessness. I think a portion of the money collected could actually be used to build 3D printed homes or earth ships, which are sustainable homes, and they're fairly affordable. And the earthships are even built out of recycled materials. So these are ways I plan on making the cost of living more affordable for the people of California.
Great. Next up will be Fuji.
Thank you. No, I will not punish and penalize homeowners who are suffering hard enough after this coronavirus. They're struggling to pay mortgages. It will be the taxpayer who will bear the brunt of these fines. And now with inflation going up on lumber, PVC, and all the materials that build a house, it is now very dangerous to penalize ordinary, everyday California taxpayers. There is a housing crisis. We got to think of innovative solutions. I'm working on it. And I believe that we have to expand housing in other places less developed, that is safe and not near wildfires, such as, more inland and more farther up north. Now is the time to be innovative and think differently, but hurting the everyday taxpayer, it's not going to work. And also, it's a form of a secret tax, because eventually those fines go back to the coffers of other politicians, and we don't want that. Californians have been overtaxed enough. There's a time and place for taxes. This is not one of them. The fines and the punishment is undue harm to everyday homeowners in California. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Frank Henry Wade, what do we do about creating greater housing supply? Are punishments the answer or something else?
Well, right. Well, I don't support penalizing local government. I think the governor should coordinate a statewide effort, maybe a nationwide effort with the federal government to help solve the huge housing problem we have in this country. We had a housing bubble in 2008. We know how we could increase the supply of homes through government subsidized, government encouraged mortgages from Fannie Mae and the other government protected mortgage institutions, for in the long run to have more housing. In the short run, we could create low income housing very similar to the housing we created in San Francisco and Richmond, where they build ships at the San Francisco Naval Shipyard. These were Quonset huts, World War II Quonset huts. We could get those up in a record amount of time. In addition, we could use FEMA camps to house people on a statewide basis. There's all these solutions we could have if we had a proper coordination from the governor. And in the long run, I feel that housing should be the least of our problems. I spent 4 years in China, and there's an abundance, there's an oversupply of housing in China. Everybody in China has a 7-room apartment. They have towers that remain unoccupied because they overbuilt these houses. So a country like China that houses their people, why can't we house our own people? Why do I have to go down on the in Stonestown in San Francisco and see hundreds of people living in their recreational vehicle? Why do I see tents on the street of the Tenderloin? This is an outrageous condition that is resulting from the lack of leadership on the part of the governor. And while he relaxes at the French restaurant, entertaining his friends, he has all this suffering that's going on around him. It's really a crime, you know?
Thank you, Professor. I appreciate that. Okay, now to the last question. This will be the last question. Each candidate will have about 1 minute to respond, and then we'll be doing closing statements. This will be the last question from the series of questions to all recall candidates from the mainstream newspaper, the Times of San Diego, that we have used and parceled out for our candidates in a series of debates. We will be asking other candidates these questions. Here is the last question. Should there be any money for law enforcement? Should any money for law enforcement be steered to social services or other programs? California has had some very high-profile police shootings of minority males. One was Oscar Grant in 2009, and the other was Stephon Clark in 2018. Now, in response to that, the California government attempted to pass SB 392, which was called a Police Reform Act, and was going to look at things like the removal of qualified immunity as written into the California Constitution almost a century earlier. It was going to be a massive retrofit of qualified immunity, the fact that when a police officer is involved in shooting, it's automatically a homicide case, and that they have to prove necessity of death, not just that it seemed to be the least unavailable option. Now, the day before the California legislature passed SB 392, Black Lives Matter itself pulled out support for that legislation because they said the California legislature removed 3 key parts that would actually allow police reform. So we have the Black Lives Matter movement, founded here by Patrisse Cullors and Alicia Garza before Opal Tometi got started. We have legislation developed here on police reform, and we have high-profile murders of African-American males by the police. Is California capable of police reform, given that our first major legislation was denied by Black Lives Matter? And if not, how do we look at the issue of defunding the police as suggested by the Black Lives Matter campaign? Our first response will be Tor.
Yes, so I believe a giant chunk of law enforcement money should be steered instead to social services or other ways of dealing with mental issues, domestic conflicts. There's plenty of types of things right now that we have armed police responding to that there's absolutely no reason to have armed police responding to. And whether that's traffic stops or visiting someone's home where there's a disturbance, it's just many other countries have shown that you can have lots of situations like that in which you don't need an armed response. And then I often hear a lot of people saying that there's just nowhere to cut in police budgets. And I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. A couple examples are, do we really need 3 police cars showing up every time there's a car wreck or someone is pulled over? Do we really need a police helicopter hovering over the scene of every car wreck or when someone's pulled over? Which I see and hear happening all the time. So I just think it's absolutely ridiculous when people say there's just nowhere to cut in the police budget that wouldn't end up harming public safety. I think there's plenty of proverbial fat that could be cut from police budgets.
Thank you. James, you are unmuted. Your response, sir.
Yes, we should redirect in the neighborhood of 20% of that money. The infamous Los Angeles Men's Central Jail Twin Towers complex has become the largest mental health facility in the United States. Jail time only worsens mental illness. In contrast, court-mandated therapy and the right medication can help those who suffer from mental illness and can turn lives around. But we need better funding to make this happen. Count on reduced domestic violence if we get it. In addition, people who can't pay for a lawyer need the help of qualified public defenders. Again, we need to better fund this support. Count on lower rates of incarceration if we get it.
Okay. Thank you. Next up will be Dan.
Yes, and I think even law enforcement, a lot of them would support that they shouldn't be dealing with certain things that aren't really for police. There are these situations that should be handled by trained mental health professionals who aren't armed with deadly force. And that would allow the police to actually focus on serious crimes. I mean, I'm in court every day. There's so much just ridiculous crimes like possession of a pipe, and they're just flooding the courtrooms. And it's just a waste of everyone's time, waste of taxpayers' money, mere possession of drugs. I mean, most people in the court systems are either mentally ill or have some kind of drug problem. And what they really should be focusing on are the serious violent crimes. And that's what the police should be investigating and actually pursuing, instead of these like ridiculous just traffic stops. They don't even need them for traffic stops. They could have an unarmed traffic police, or not police, traffic people. So yeah, even they would probably prefer to actually be devoting their time and money on serious stuff. So I'm definitely for that. And I think that would just save, millions and millions of dollars. People are stuck in like the jails that are horrible. And it is the biggest mental health facility in the country, in Twin Towers. So yeah, I think we definitely need to not defund the police. That's such a word people get all crazy about, but just fund these other projects and let police focus what they need to do. And we need huge reform, more transparency. They need to be held accountable, get rid of qualified immunity. And if they are found that they've shot someone illegally, they need to be put in a database so everyone can know about it, not hide them or just transfer them to another police department.
Thank you. Nicholas Wildstar.
What's that? Can you hear me?
Yes. Should money for law enforcement be steered to social services or other programs?
Well, I actually agree with Dan and Tor on this one, who I'm actually surprised to hear answers from, since he plans on, giving the seat to the lieutenant governor and resigning on day one. So I'm surprised to actually hear him provide some solutions. But yes, our police officers are definitely receiving a lot of money and spending a lot of their time, harassing, innocent people instead of focusing on violent criminals. But less money for police means more money for social programs, but it's a waste of money when those social programs aren't working. And we as taxpayers shouldn't continue to invest into them. So as governor, that's what I'll be doing, is getting government out of the way to allow people of the community, those people out there that want to get involved, like the churches and the nonprofit organizations and even the free markets and businesses that would like to step up and provide those solutions being demanded by the people, by the community. So I want to make jobs, cops' jobs easier by letting them focus on, violent criminals instead of going after drug users or even drug dealers, which is why I plan on decriminalizing all substances to streamline law enforcement and make our neighborhood safer.
Thank you. Fuji.
Thank you. There's something called the thin blue line. I believe in it. This is a very nefarious way to defund the police, and I will not allow that to happen under my watch. I have a 5-year, 10-year plan. Yes, there's ways to save money and increase our police personnel. I believe what we need to do is get from municipal police, have them transferred to a county police department. Within 10 years, have the county sheriff's department turn into a state police department, number one. And also we need a state police department just for our schools, high schools specifically, to help prevent crime, to really work with the kids. Yes, this is one way to do it. But we need to have 2-person police teams in cities of 1 million or more. This is not the time to bring up hidden agendas to defund the police. I'm Governor Fuji. I will refund our law enforcement to protect our communities and businesses. So now is the time to ask difficult questions. Do we want to defund the police under different names? No. We need to really work and support our police officers. The thin blue line protects us from chaos, and I'm thankful and grateful for our brave heroes in uniform. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Wade. Should we redirect money to social services?
Well, on the subject, well, my belief is that our police departments have to get our backing, and they're actually excellent in the state of California. I believe there could be more minority recruitment of the police departments. I believe that the policemen themselves could get a little more training to deal with people with psychological problems enough to bring in the people who incarcerate mentally disturbed people. The closing of the gulag of mental institutions in the state of California by Governor Reagan and the second Jerry Brown, I think, was premature. We should have not closed those mental institutions, even though they were badly ran and there were many abuses in the mental institutions. We need them to get the severely crazy people out off the street so they don't hurt other people and hurt themselves. So I would propose bringing back the mental institutions in the state of California on a limited basis. I know it's expensive, but it has to be done. We can't allow mentally incompetent people to walk among us because they're causing so many problems. And this would also be used to get people with mental problems to not allow them to have guns and so forth. But we should stop blaming the police. The police is one of...
I apologize. We have to keep the time for everybody. We're running up against the clock. We're going to move to closing statements now. Every candidate will be able to give their closing statement. They can say whatever they would like. You have 2 minutes. There will be a hard cutoff in 2 minutes. Please don't speak over 2 minutes. You will be muted. You have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. You could talk about a policy you'd like to espouse. You could comment on anything anyone else said, or you can just leave a very philosophical Shakespearean level speech to woo the voters about you. Let's go first in order with Tor.
Yes. So again, I'm against this recall. And so if, like me, you're against this recall, my ask is simple. Vote no on question 1 about whether or not to recall Newsom, and then vote for myself on question 2, because I will resign on day 1, handing the governorship to our current Democratic lieutenant governor, who has shown that she's experienced and vetted and competent. So if, like myself, if you're fine with the job Newsom has been doing, vote no on 1, vote for myself on question 2 to ensure a smooth transition to someone else's governor that's also a Democrat, that's a known entity. And I'd also like to take the rest of my time to just say, I feel like people need to really listen to what some of these candidates are saying and not just get caught up on, which ones are maybe have the best slogans or the best public speakers, and just kind of listen to what they're saying. Because we've got candidates out there in this race who want to make abortion illegal, which is not the country or state that I would want to live in. We've got candidates saying that no one should have to pay any taxes, which I think is crazy. We have people saying they have anti-vaxxers as one of their strategists, which I personally think is crazy. We have people saying we had an overreaction to COVID-19. We've had over 600,000 Americans die of COVID-19, and we're saying we had an overreaction to it. The typical death rate for seasonal flu is around, I believe, 1,500 people a year. COVID-19 has killed over 600,000 already. And lastly, you can't claim that we have a rigged two-party system, because California for a few years now has had a system where any party can run in the initial ballot and the top 2 make it to the final ballot regardless of their political party. So it's not as if third parties or independents are being shut out from our process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is going to be, one second, let me pause, reset, start. Next person is James. Let me unmute you. James, you have 2 minutes for a closing statement, sir. Professor Hennig.
Thank you. It's an interesting thought experiment, gentlemen. What would I do were I elected? But of course, none of you will be elected. So what I'm really interested in is what we're going to be doing during the recall. And during the recall, what I'm going to be doing is representing the platform of the American Solidarity Party. We believe in the dignity of the person. Each and every human being has an intrinsic dignity. We believe in the common good, and I've discussed that earlier. The first measure of justice in any society is how the weakest are treated, and I've discussed that. We believe in the principle of subsidiarity, beginning at the ground level and moving up, and I've discussed that. We believe in economic democracy, and I wish I could discuss that more. There's no political democracy unless there's economic democracy. There's no economic democracy unless there's widespread ownership. We lack widespread ownership, and that's what we need to work for. And of course, human dignity presupposes and gives rise to freedom. But we don't treat anybody as having freedom unless we respect their lives. Thank you.
Next up will be Dan.
All right. Well, James, speak for yourself. I am in it to win it. I am going to get elected governor if the recall goes through. Now, if the recall doesn't go through, I will also count that as a victory. But either way, I'm going to be victorious. You can speak a lot. There's a lot of things can happen between now and election. We're just starting, man, and you stay tuned. But Tor kind of criticizing my campaign because I have, an anti-vaxxer as a campaign strategist. My whole point is that I'm willing to embrace all people, all Californians. Doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily agree with that person, but I want to hear everyone's views, and I want to, go through it critically. And so I have a big tent, man. I'm going to represent all Californians. And if the lieutenant governor, if she wants to run, let her run. She could have run in this recall election. I think the lieutenant governor in the last recall election, Bustamante, did run. He didn't win, and she probably wouldn't win either. So if she wants to be governor, she should run for governor. She could run right now. It wouldn't be that hard. And I think I'm the guy for the environment, because I believe on these animal issues, that's one of the hugest problems with our environment, which is going to help fight wildfires, drought, global warming, criminal justice is a big one. I agree with Mr. Wildstar. We got to decriminalize drugs, decriminalize prostitution, decriminalize gambling. And speaking of gambling, I'm willing to bet you, James, that I'm going to be the governor if the recall goes through. And you name your price, buddy. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
To the sky.
Next up is going to be Nicholas. Closing statements, Governor candidate Wildstar.
Well, I'd like to remind everyone out there in California that the last time we had a recall election in the state of California, a Republican was elected. That Republican was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I would like to be that Republican that is elected this time around that can bridge the gap between the left and the right. What this pandemic panic has proven to us is that time is of the essence. We, the people, should be preparing ourselves for the worst times. We need to make sure that we have dependable food. We need to make sure we have dependable water, dependable energy, and a dependable roof over our heads. So that's what I'll be doing as governor. It may seem wild that I want to get rid of taxes, but we should, when we've been taxed this entire time for our schools, yet haven't been able to send our kids to school. We've been taxed for gasoline, yet we've been told to stay home. So we've had taxation without representation over the past year, which is why for the next year, I'll be suspending all of those taxes and let you keep that money in your own pocket where it belongs. It shouldn't be wild for anyone to think that you should be able to protect yourself, since I want to make California a constitutional carry state, when the majority of arrests of Black and brown people in this state are due to them being in possession of a weapon. So we need to attack these racist laws. We need to attack the accountability or government corruption with accountability. So for 1 year, go wild with Wildstar for governor. I'm the only candidate that will suspend taxes, hold government accountable, show fiscal restraint, stop government from dictating your life, and return the right to choose and live free to you, we the people of California. Vote Wildstar for governor.
Wow, that was, yeah, nice. Okay, Fuji, closing statement.
Thank you.
Mr. Sherman.
My name is Fuji, and I recently got elected in December as a library trustee for a special district in the city of Placentia. My background is also an educator, and I care deeply that our public libraries could augment and help our kids in this crisis. So I started to ask the hard questions that so many other board members were not asking for whatever reason. A new member of Congress, from my last check, makes around $172,000 a year. Our local library in Placentia is about the size of a CVS, but smaller. And yet the library director makes, according to documentation I read, $179,000 a year. And the library only has 20 some employees, and it's limited hours. Why? I'm asking the hard questions. For every tax dollar collected, I found documentation that we were only spending less than 10 cents on books and materials. Imagine that, less than 10 cents for every tax dollar collected on books and materials for our public library. And yet we're paying almost $200,000 for a single person. This isn't right. We need our public libraries to have in-person tutoring. We need to have charter schools. We need to have two-man or two-women person teams for our police department to help guard our communities. We need innovative ideas, and I'm the one to do it. Vote Fuji, F-U-J-I, family, unity, justice, integrity. Go to my website, www.governor.life. I'm pro-life. I'm independent. I'm a disruptor, willing to get the job done for all the candidates here. And I'm so proud and thankful that Dan, Nicholas, and Tor and the professors are here, and I'm thankful for Marcus. Thank all of you for making this a great state, because all of you make us the best we can all be. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent. Frank, closing statement, sir.
Okay, first I'd like to touch on the forest fire problem we have in the state. I believe that we should do fire prevention, the building of fire roads all through the forest, and also the burning of brush in order to eliminate these large fires that are occurring. After the fire occurs, I think the logging company should have, or some other company should have, the right to go in and salvage what boards of timber are still available after the fire. When I was in Mozambique, I saw the Nadia cyclone. Mozambique got millions of dollars worth of mahogany from the cyclone that caused the trees to fall, which they were their national treasures. The other point I want to make is I support a mandatory free arbitration courts for civil and labor disputes. Currently, we have arbitration courts, but you can elect to opt out of it if you don't like the result of the arbitration. That should be they should be free courts like the small claims court, in which you can bring labor and housing disputes, and the both parties should agree to be bound by the arbitration verdict unless the one party opts out before the court starts. And this would eliminate this nonsense in California of employment at will. In other words, everyone who works in the state of California can be fired tomorrow by merely stating the employer says goodbye. This is nonsense. I want this to be stopped. That's my new proposal for the state. And basically, as I reiterated, I have 40 years of experience in dealing with problems of large companies, and because of my status as a CPA, I have a fiduciary responsibility to look at all aspects and to arrive at the truth and fairness in all my decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all the candidates for being here. I'm going to show two statistics and then close it out. So the Public Policy Institute of California is the main survey organization, and they do a lot of studies for the California government. They're the go-to for California. Now, it is true in March 2021 that 56% of voters said they want to keep Newsom. You're going to see a lot of newspaper articles saying a majority of Californians, 56% say they want to keep Newsom, and that's true. But that exact same survey also asked, do you think it's okay to have a recall election? And 52% of the voters said yes. So there is a majority that likes Newsom, but there's also a clear majority that likes the recall election. You will not see this contradiction from the exact same poll mentioned anywhere in the news. Let's take a look at some of the more recent polling. Now, this is the 56% for Newsom. You're going to see a lot of that. But what's interesting is that it's only one poll. It is the outlier. The Berkeley poll, the Survey USA, and the Emerson poll, all reasonable polls, all were in the 42, around 45 range. The PPIC poll was 10 percentage points above. So the PPIC, or the 56% support for Newsom, does not match the other polls. In fact, the majority of polls show that under half of California is for not removing him, and a smaller percent is for removing him. So what's happening is we don't have clear majorities definitively across polls for Newsom or against him. We do have a poll that shows majority support for Newsom, but we also have another poll showing majority support for the recall. The point is simply this: you don't know where it's going. And there's a lot of misinformation showing this way and that way. It might be a race to the finish, and we at Yes California will be here to host a series of debates all the way to that last final day. We thank all the candidates for being part of us. Please let all declared candidates know that they are welcome here, and we want to have a place for them to participate. I would ask all candidates to leave. This is the end of the debate. Thank you for being here.